everybody, it's Court here, and we're checking back in with you from the underground. Today, we're talking about dating. And I know what you're about to say. Oh my God, everybody talks about dating. It's so saturated over the internet. Red pill. Oh, here comes another one. No, I really hope that this is maybe a different kind of conversation about the topic, right? And hopefully, maybe this is actually the video that gets you to subscribe. So, um, a lot of maybes might be happening today. Maybe they're good ones. But anyway, dating. Every time this topic comes up, the conversation immediately breaks down into preferences. Who likes who should change, and who's going about dating wrong, the men or women, right? And that framing is safe and allows for easy consumption and is widely entertaining, but it's very misleading actually. Preferences don't come from just nowhere, right? Randomly. No, they're shaped by history, power, survival, and repetition. So today we're hopefully not analyzing feelings, right? Not hopefully, we're not analyzing feelings. Maybe some of you might watching that might watch this might get in your face a little bit, but that's your decision. I ask you not to though, at least not until after you finish the video. But today we're more so analyzing systems, right? The system of dating, if you will, and how that pertains to the black male nerd. Because I would have to argue out of any type of man that is in the dating market, whether it is white, uh, black, Hispanic, Asian, whoever, insert nationality, I think the type of man that gets the most shit is specifically the black male nerd. Because black male nerds didn't just randomly lose dating leverage or desirability in the marketplace. No, we've actually been delayed, like structurally, like systematically, from being able to develop a form of intellect that society could see as valuable and desirable. And when desire is delayed long enough, the consequences start to stack. So, modern dating isn't a merit based system. It doesn't reward long term potential. It doesn't reward who will be solid in 5 years from now. It rewards speed. It rewards insanity, honestly. And, and today, dating really favors, again, instant recognition, instant gratification, even um, familiar archetypes. So, there's a pattern in the type of people you date, right? Emotional intensity. So, again, peaks of emotion or that are high or peaks of emotion that are low, and quick readability, meaning I can look at you and quickly assess what kind of man or woman you are and make an assessment and decision, and boom. So anything that requires time, observation, and like extended pattern recognition, right? Those things get undervalued in today's dating market. I really don't know why, because they're so necessary to a stable relationship. But black male nerds really function like low compounding assets, right? Um, in a system built for instant return. Their value builds over time, basically. And dating culture just doesn't have the patience to wait and see that outcome nowadays. And that mismatch that's happening, that is affecting so many of us, it really isn't personal. at this point. We have to acknowledge that it's structural, it's by design. So let's talk about it. From 1619 to 1865, black male intellect wasn't discouraged, it was actually criminalized. After revolts like the Stoner Rebellion of 1739, laws were passed across colonies banning literacy among enslaved people. So teaching a black man to read could mean fines for you as a slave owner, imprisonment even as a slave owner, and violence brought towards you. And why is that? It's because intellect, especially during this time when not many people had access to education and information, it suggested autonomy, which was not good with what they had going on during that time. It was throw a monkey wrench right into everything. And again, this would threaten the system that they had established. So black masculinity evolved around what actually kept people alive. So physical endurance and strength, emotional expressiveness or lack thereof, right? And observational intelligence. So basically, like being able to look and see what you're seeing, and social adaptability, like being able to adapt to um, social norms and the conforms of the society around you. So thinking actually was quite dangerous, especially if you were a black man. And thinking publicly, especially as a black man, it was actually quite lethal. And so masculinity forms around what's allowed, right, rather than what is actually ideal in this culture nowadays, right? So that distortion just didn't disappear in old times, right? No, that is actually still present today in modern times, in modern dating. So after emancipation, right, the punishment didn't end for any black men that were intellectual or showcased it publicly, right? It just kind of changed its form a little bit, right? It transformed. During Reconstruction, black men briefly had access to education and political power, right? But that window was quickly shut by the 1890s with the introduction of Jim Crow laws, right? And these defunded black schools, it restricted movement and access, and it targeted educated black men economically and violently. And so a thinking black man became labeled as arrogant and dangerous and out of place. And so lynching accusations often came down to a man who, as they would say, forgot his place, which really meant he was just showing independence and, again, autonomy. So intellect never really was a stable signal of black masculinity in history and also in today's time because it's risky. It's really unknown because no one really has gotten to a place where they're really interested of exploring and understanding the black male. Between the 1930s and the 1970s, right, black male intellect finally did get some visibility, but after centuries of being shunned and ridiculed for it, right, it really didn't amount to much. And they had to struggle just to get that, right? And at this time, the dominant archetypes were this that were allowed to be visible: the revolutionary, the radical thinker, the angry intellectual, and the tortured genius. Not the best representation. It's kind of very limiting if this is all we have to see as examples of black intellect in a man, right? And it was only really like it was only allowed in the areas that were confrontational, right? If it was an exceptional subject matter or a person, right, or if it was a painful discussion, right, or if it was dramatized, right. So there was really no space for just the chill, quiet engineer, the calm, collected analyst, or the boringly competent man. Just wasn't nothing they could do. So you know, even so again um, in historical times and in modern times, even intellect in a black man is not normalized. It's really not even celebrated, honestly. And people that honestly think they champion black males and black men, they really don't. A lot of them really don't. It's really performative, right? So again, this whole black male intellectual, it's kind of a myth if you really think about it. And that's why today the average black male nerd doesn't register as familiar. He's actually looked at as dangerous, not heroic. So he oftentimes gets overlooked again because people don't believe in it. And when black men began entering universities and STEM fields and corporate spaces in mass, and this is again roughly the late 1970s going forward, the sexual economy had already been established in modern America. Yes, policies open doors, so we did have the Civil Rights Act, the expansion of the education system and department, and affirmative action. But we also had to contend with things like the sexual revolution and drugs and things of that nature that was introduced to the black community that kind of halted that forward progressiveness, right? Um, and by this time, attraction had already been scripted for the black male. You already had certain archetypes, character that you had to choose from, right? And this and a lot was due to media, right? They had already defined what masculinity was to the masses, right? And music had already taught us what desire and what love is supposed to look like, even though it doesn't. And that's another conversation, but kind of don't like our music for that reason. Like it's a pseudo form of desire, pseudo form of love, pseudo form of connection that is really kind of in a lot of our music. Different conversation for a different day. Um, and again, dating norms had already been solidified by this time. So the black male intellect became just useful, employable, meaning I could use it use it at my discretion for my benefit, and it was respectable from a distance. Like, oh, that's cute, but it wasn't a penny dropper. No, it wasn't. It wasn't gonna stimulate nobody. And so culture learned how to use black male intellect long before it learned how to desire it or appreciate it properly, steward it properly, even. And usefulness doesn't automatically lead to attraction. No. And other groups didn't really have to deal with that. When I say groups, I mean groups of people, rationalities, right? Um, they had generations to link intellect with desirability. Let's give some examples. In European culture, historically or present, maybe not so much present today, but historically definitely, European masculinity was tied to intelligence, to inheritance, and leadership, meaning you had to be smart. So think about all the philosophers, right? Think about the intellectuals, right? That are in across European culture and history. Think about inheritance, right? So, owning of land and property, owning of resources and assets, things that black people don't really do in mass, right? And leadership. kings, royalty, you know, dukes, things of that nature. All this was in the European society, and they had time to develop all this. Another example, Asian culture. Masculinity was tied to intelligence here as well as discipline and provision. So again, like those connections had time to establish, be identified, and be perfected, right? And that was not the case in Black culture. Um, Predominantly here in America, right? Black men, we didn't get that. No. Instead, masculinity kind of is split between physical expressiveness, which now is tied to, your sexual appeal or ability, and intellectual restraint becomes neutral, meaning, yeah, you're smart, yeah, you're intelligent, yeah, you've got things figured out, but yeah, that's cool. That's typically the response that most of us get. So black male nerds break expectations twice, right? They don't fit the dominant black masculine script, which is kind of why so many nerds maybe start going to the gym or things of that nature because they're trying to fit the build, right? It doesn't necessarily work. But you should do it because you care about your health. Um, and they don't benefit, honestly, from their intellect because me having a conversation with you as a woman and me being a man, and I'm discussing manga, anime, I'm discussing video games, I'm discussing nature and things of that nature, things that like elevate my mind and give me peace and just simple enjoyability. And if I were to share that with you as a woman, 9 times out of 10, you're gonna be like, "Shut up, just shut up." That's most likely gonna be your response. And we can't say that the rejection is aggressive. I think if we keep ourselves looking at this from a surface level, we can, yes, but more accurately, this is just a misunderstanding, really. And being misunderstood kills attraction faster than being disliked. People actually like you if they don't like you. Ain't that crazy? People like you even when they hate you. Think about that for a second. But confidence isn't universal. It's actually kind of coded, right? It's tricky to understand. It's an equation. And the confidence rewarded in modern dating today is often loud, assertive, sexually forward or promiscuous, and a little invasive, right? And that style evolved environments where status had to be quickly claimed. And nerd confidence, the expression of nerd confidence really looks different. Like it's more situational, it's more reciprocal. It's kind of a slow burn, and it's really non-performative. Like this is just me, you know. So when black nerds are told just be confident, bro, you got it, they're actually being asked to act a way that would feel unnatural. Because again, we know that confidence in today's time is attributed to just more so just simple minded things. And so to be confident from that perspective, it's kind of like, what? No. Why? Ugh. So, they're asked to just act in ways that feel unnatural to them, again, like I said. And that creates anxiety, not attraction. And confidence without alignment, it tends to collapse. And black nerds really, again, black male nerds specifically, aren't losing because we're some broken thing. No, we're actually really losing because we're just kind of overexposed in the wrong environments, right? And it's no fault of our own. This is just kind of the world we live in. There's a lot of bad shit everywhere that we kind of just have to walk through that mud, regardless. And attention becomes, when attention is the currency, right? Spectacle and just chaos and drama tends to be rewarded, right? And you know, kind of trying to follow that pattern in operation mode, like tends to lead to burnout, resentment, and identity erosion, right? You kind of lose who you are. And the black male nerd doesn't succeed, in this system, right? They actually just choose to leave it, and that's honestly where they find their success. An insert conversation of so many, or what they say is so many black men that are leaving the black community to, date outside their race. And so again, they're doing it for a reason. Those that are, I tend to believe that most black men actually want to marry and be with a black woman, but they're going to a place where there's a definite timeline. Like, well, we know there's a start, there's an end, there's an end goal. And their competence is actually compounded, and it's appreciated, and them being a reliable man actually can be visualized and understood in the places where they find success. And so they actually, they get to stop auditioning and just really start designing environments and being who they are, doing what they do best. And that's really not avoidance. Like so many black women or just women in general will argue, it's actually just simple strategy. So if you are a black male nerd and you resonate with any of this message, or you understand what I'm talking about, and you find yourself maybe having some difficulty or just frustrations with the opposite sex, this isn't a personal failure. And also, just to be clear, this is not an attack on black women either. This is more so a historical assessment of how things got to be how they are, so that both black men, black male nerds that are experiencing this and their with this issue with their counterparts, the black woman can understand what's going on, and also allow for understanding from black women who might be in relationships with a black male nerd, or those women that are like slowly discovering that, oh my god, I'm dating one. And we can't move forward unless we remember the past. So, to my dudes out there, to my bros out there, to all my guys out there, and the few ladies that might, accidentally find themselves watching this video, remember something about masculinity and your masculinity as a black male, not anybody else's, us. It was criminalized historically, and it's kind of criminalized today, even still. It's been punished historically. And though it's less punished today, it still very much is. And I think most of that punishment comes from our own community. And your masculinity was also dramatized and romanticized, right? And that's why we see a lot of the crazy stuff we see now and how people expect men to operate, because the form of masculinity that is socially accepted broadly and widely is a feminine version of masculinity. Let that sink in. And only recently has just the idea of black masculinity, standalone black masculinity, mind you, is starting to be tolerated. And again, this is in part due to the highly sexual economy that exists in Western societies. and they tend to lag a lot behind when it comes to social progress. And the crazy thing about it, the funny thing about it is they don't change when when they're supposed to, right? They don't change to make things fair. They don't change because things aren't fair. Again, talking about you know societies that have a high amount of sexual influence and engagement, like we see in America. They change because the outdated system becomes unstable. And I would argue that we're reaching that point in Western society. It's becoming unstable. Look at what's happening around the country. Minnesota, look what's happening around various places, right? Um, it's very unstable. And this lets me know that there is a change coming. And so it's our responsibility as black male nerds to get ahead of the curve because we never arrive last. We tend to arrive first. So understand something. You're not being rejected. And just be patient and continue to be you. Don't give up who you are and just rock out. Again, this is Court from the underground. We're going back underground. Peace. From their body, if I'm in the DMs, like yo, Gotti. If she bring a friend, she gon' watch me. Shit, if she bring a friend, she